So I'm going to bounce around a little bit. I'll pre-warn you. I'll be here for a while and then I'll be over there for a while. So you'll make it. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Katie Noble. So today we're going to talk about Jurassic Park, which I know some of you may have thought was a film, but I have news for you. It was not a film. It was a cautionary tale, and we'll get into that in a minute. So a little bit about myself. I am the director of ProdSec and Bug Bounty at a Fortune 50 tech company. I spent 5 years at said Fortune 50 tech company. I am not representing Fortune 50 tech company while I am here at first. So this is all me, all my perspectives all the time. I spent 15 years in the US government where I focused on vulnerability coordination. I was previously the sponsor of the CVE program, the NVD program, Carnegie Mellon CERT CC program, and the ICSIRT vulnerability handling program. And in the course of my career, I've coordinated and been part of the coordination and disclosure of over 20,000 cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So that is my claim to fame. And with that, let's move into the talk. Okay. So today we're going to talk about dinosaurs and a little bit about zero trust. So people think that Jurassic Park is a film about dinosaurs, but it's not. It's a cautionary tale of over-reliance on industrial control systems with a clear lack of zero trust principles across the network. And it just demonstrates a lack of professionalization in operations planning, a lack of professionalization in the norm of taking cybersecurity as an actual career field. So we'll talk about some of the necessary elements and the principles that should be employed that were not employed. And I will give a little disclaimer. This talk is not going to change your life. This talk is not going to change much of anything. There's no deep meaning here. There's no great call to action. This is a lighthearted way to talk about zero trust on a Thursday afternoon when we're all task saturated and we've been listening to brilliant talks for the last week. So with that. Okay, so Jurassic Park, I hope that we have all seen the movie because if we haven't, we're going to be in deep trouble. But that's okay. We are talking about the very first movie. The rest of the movies don't count. They never happened. There is no kingdom involved or domains. We're not racing raptors. We're talking about the very first movie. All right, so the premise of the movie, just to get everyone caught up, we have businessman John Hammond wants to create the ultimate theme park. He enlists a team of geneticists and engineers to engineer dinosaur DNA. They merge that with frog DNA, which has unintended consequences, and reestablish dinosaurs on the Isle of Isla Nublar, which is actually Costa Rica. Now, they create a mostly automated theme park with a variety of dinosaurs, ranging from Vegisauruses all the way to our raptors and T-Rexes and our primary predators. John Hammond, for legal liability purposes, invites a group of paleontologists, some other experts, a lawyer, and of course his grandchildren. What could possibly go wrong? Unbeknownst to John Hammond, corporate espionage is taking place at that very moment. A company has approached the head IT person, Dennis Neardry, offered him $1.5 million to steal dinosaur embryos. Dennis has created a malicious package that he can turn off all of the security so that he can do this theft. And he uses an upcoming storm as a distraction to execute this insider attack. So I think we're now caught up with the premise of the movie. What could possibly go wrong? Now the dinosaurs. All right, so quickly about our head protagonist here, Dennis Neardry. So he's a computer programmer with financial problems. He engages in corporate espionage and insider threat. He's hired by a company to steal dinosaur embryos. And based on an upcoming storm, he is forced to act early. He launches a malicious program that deactivates the security doors and the security fences. Again, what could go wrong? Many warning signs, and I really would have recommended, had this been my customer, that a risk assessment be conducted on the entire staff, let alone the one IT person. So, okay, now the fun part is over. Now let's talk about zero trust. So now that we have the basics of the film, we're going to talk briefly about the fundamentals of zero trust. So zero trust and zero trust maturity model as defined by NIST 800-207 When we talk about zero trust, what we're really talking about is a collection of policies and concepts that are designed to reduce uncertainty and enforce least privilege concepts. So we include components and component relationships like workflows, planning, access privileges, and portfolio governance. The core idea being that no user or no application is implicitly trusted. So we're moving away from the model of implicit trust, and we're saying that no system, no user, no system and no user is implicitly trusted. Each device, application, and transaction is verified. Now, sounds great, except here's the bad news. It's expensive and it requires a lot. So it's very expensive to implement zero trust and zero trust maturity model in your networks. It also represents a significant challenge to usually philosophical and cultural ideas within organizations. So there's often resistance in implementing zero trust principles. By its very nature, zero trust requires buy-in from all stakeholders. So we're talking senior leadership, IT staff, data owners, system administrators, and ultimately all users. So that is what we mean when we're talking about zero trust. Now, when we're talking about zero trust maturity models, we're talking about the 4 pillars or 5 pillars of zero trust. So those are identity, devices, networks, applications, and data. Within each pillar, we have a cross-cutting capabilities of visibility and analysis, automation and orchestration, governance and compliance. So as you move through the zero trust journey, we expect most organizations to start at a traditional level. At a traditional level, most operations are manual. So we're talking about manual provisioning, manual lifecycle, manual monitoring. And as we move up into the advanced stages and the optimal stages, what we're seeing is fully automated systems with just-in-time life cycles, just-in-time dynamic privileging, and a much better access controls. So, all right, zero trust. I think we've covered that. Now back to dinosaurs. All right, now I'm going to move. I got the hard stuff done, so now I don't need notes anymore. All right, so where did zero trust go wrong? Or where did zero trust in Jurassic Park go wrong? Let's start with very basic. Segregation of duties. We have a clear lack of segregation of duties in our operational controls or operation controls at all. You cannot implement solid zero trust, basic cyber hygiene principles with one IT guy. Just can't do it. This whole movie could have been nothing. It could have been let's hire more than one IT guy and we're done. But it wasn't. It was a cautionary tale. And more than 30 years later, we are still seeing that cautionary tale repeat itself over and over. So governance, risk compliance programs rely on essential internal organizational controls like segregation of duties. This is mostly going to be memes from here on out. Just prepare yourself. Automation. We have a distinct over-reliance on industrial control systems. We have high-risk fences and security doors should have had multiple controls, multiple factors to mitigate the risk of a power outage. This is basic. This is very, very basic stuff. We also had very poor planning, but I'll get into that in a minute. We were so busy thinking about whether we could, we never stopped to think about whether we should. And I see that over and over again. So insider threat, we have a big insider threat problem, obviously. This whole movie, as you see from the meme there, could have been, I'm the only person here, pay me. And leadership could have said, okay. And then that would have been the end of the movie. But instead, we didn't have that. So risk assessment should be done on all employees, especially those in high risk roles and roles of excess privileges. Warning signs should have been followed up on. Those risk assessments should be conducted with periodic reviews as well, because just because an employee is in good financial status now doesn't mean that they will be in a year. Warning signs should have been followed up on consistently. We saw negative attitudes. We saw confrontational attitudes. We saw repeated conversations focused on financial problems and disillusionment. And I hate to say that coworkers should have snitched on their colleague, but the other folks in the operations center there were well aware of the insider threat IT guy here, Mr. Dennis Neardry. Okay, so this is probably the thing that makes me the most crazy. So professionalization of cybersecurity as an IT norm. I am sure that everyone in this room has experienced this. Most companies will not hesitate to hire a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant if they need it. But for some reason, it is still the common basic practice that in a dentist office, the receptionist is also running the IT. And that is not okay. That is not the world we live in anymore. We cannot continue to operate that way. Cybersecurity and IT are a professional career that should be treated as such. No expense was spared on geneticists, on lawyers, on scientists, and you see the outcome, dinosaurs. Okay, business continuity plans. We're actually going to be really early. This is going to be a really short talk. So business continuity planning. There was a clear lack of a well-established business continuity plan. This business continuity plan was not exercised. Employees were unaware of what was going on. For an island that regularly receives poor weather, a business continuity plan with backup generators and backup policies should have been business as usual. This is something you can plan for. This is something that happens regularly, and there are a lot of examples on best practices across the board. If you are in a flood zone, it's probably well known. There were no procedures for power outages. There were no backup systems identified. The essential personnel were not identified. The essential systems were not identified. These are basic things that should be incorporated into every business continuity plan. And the biggest problem, I think, is that you never, ever, 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 I can't stress this enough, you don't put the Raptor cage directly in between the main control room and the backup breakers. If you have Raptors, please don't do that. Okay, so as I said, this was a very short talk. I would like for us to think quickly about the fact that this movie took place more than 30 years ago, and we're talking about a organization and a network that was on-prem. What would have happened if this kind of attack had happened and the park had been networked and somebody had been able to turn off the fences from New Zealand? And that is the world that we live in today. There is no difference between the cybersecurity of the real world and the online world. The consequences of a impact in industrial control systems in the world that we live in are safety critical, and they're not something that we should be fooling with anymore. We should have stopped fooling with it a long time ago, and we have not. So I will leave you with that. I think we have a couple of minutes left. We can take questions. I hope that this was an enjoyable way to spend a couple of minutes thinking about some implementation of best practices when it comes to your theme parks. Okay.
So, any question? Please approach the microphone in the middle here. Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Super interesting talk. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. So this is still relevant, right? And you said this is 30 years. Why do you think that is?
I think that there is some cognitive dissonance that goes on. I think that on the whole, the average business owner doesn't consider cybersecurity to be real or tangible. And I think that that is partially our fault. There is kind of an allure around cybersecurity and cyber defense and cyber that is the hacker in the hoodie. And it has not necessarily always been an approachable thing. And so I think that a lot of businesses have simply done the bare minimum because there are very little consequences for not doing the bare minimum. So that is why I think that this is still relevant. Consequences. I'm all about the stick right now. I'm finished with carrots. So I'm all about liability.
Please.
Okay, but haven't you considered that dinosaurs are really cool and that we should have more dinosaurs, like in society in general?
I believe they say nature finds a way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm a personal lover of dinosaurs. I will tell you that my wedding was dinosaur themed. I had little golden dinosaurs at my wedding. as the giveaways for everybody's place name. I think dinosaurs are really cool, but I think that they do represent an existential threat, and you can replace dinosaurs with climate change, and you still have the existential threat that exists when we're talking about over-reliance on industrial control systems.
That will make for an awful wedding theme.
Go ahead.
So you explained here that in the park there was no real consideration for cybersecurity,
Mhm.
but then the cybersecurity had like physical consequences.
Yes.
In our practices and in our conferences, we're really talking about cybersecurity, the cyber resilience, etc. We're focusing a lot on the digital aspects, but we're kind of ignoring all of the physical aspects. Shouldn't we be integrating more with like the physical responses and keeping in mind the physical consequences of cybersecurity?
I think you've summed up my entire talk.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeroen. So I'll give you a little bit of an example about this. I come from a critical infrastructure, Department of Homeland Security, public service background. And I think we go back to what Dr. Ian Malcolm said. We thought about whether we should, we thought about whether we could. We never thought about whether we should. And the technical aspects of it are so cool, right? I work for DEF CON too. So like I see all the like fun stuff that's going on in the hacker world or in the cybersecurity world. That's so cool. I did an assessment one time of a dam. So this is, a dam that raises and lowers water levels. So critical infrastructure. And what we found was that the linchpin that was keeping the entire organization, the entire dam secure, was not a technical control. It was the unions. And what I mean by that is that the labor union refused in their contract to lay off workers or go into any kind of automated standing. So the entire dam was automated, and they could raise and lower the paddles that raise and lower the water levels from behind a control room. But because of the unions and because of the union jobs, those systems were never hooked up. So somebody had to manually go out, raise and lower that paddle to raise and lower the water levels. And that was the thing that was keeping it all together. And I see that over and over again. And so I never underestimate the power of manual controls. Just install some more door locks. I mean, we could have saved some Raptors from a little click, just a little click. But instead we had to reboot the entire Unix system. I mean, come on, click. So I think the reliance on automation is incredibly important, but it's also important to understand the physical realities of the world that we live in, and the cyber physical relationship is something that can't be understated.
But then if I can add sort of like a call to action to your talk, there are physical crisis response planning processes.
Oh, yes.
And we have to get involved with those. We have to recognize those and have to think about the physical consequences of cybersecurity and make sure that we're aligned. I mean, in a city, if you have the city outside, the bus traffic, if the bus monitors start to fail,
Yes.
and if the indicators start to fail, then you have a problem with like a mass of people that have to go somewhere, and you have a crisis.
You have a crisis, but I would take it further and say, what about the ambulance that's taking somebody to the emergency room because they're in the middle of a stroke? And the difference between 30 seconds could save that person's life. And being able to get through that traffic light in a well-formed traffic environment can be the difference between life and death. It may only impact that one person, but that's 100% for that person's family. So I don't think that it can be understated. We don't live in a world where if the internet goes down, my Facebook is down, oh, sad for me. We live in a world where the integration is at a level where life and critical systems, critical infrastructure relies on what we do behind a keyboard.
Okay, then that was a very interesting and well, say original presentation. Let me phrase it like that.
Make it longer next time.
Awesome. Unless there's any further question, please let's thank our speaker again